Hey, welcome back to the channel. So this is a project I've been working on. It's probably 2/3 done, and I was gonna video it start to finish, and I just got started and never did the video. I did take a lot of pictures, and so I'll show you some before and afters. Okay, so here's how the cart looked when I bought it. Um, it was just used mostly, well, early in its life, it was on a golf course. Then was used on a little farm just to get around the pond and that kind of thing. So it's had light use for most of its life. And I did paint it. I just painted it with Rust-Oleum rattle cans. You'll see that here in a second. Primered first and then painted. And then I did what they call cut and buff. Wet sanded down to 1500 grit sandpaper, both on the primer then after it was painted, and then rubbed it out with rubbing compound and polishing compound, and yeah, I got a halfway respectable finish. It doesn't look too bad. But then I started working on the mechanics. Winter's coming, and I wanted to get it painted before it gets too cold to paint. So anyway, that's what I worked on first. And once that was done, and I did also buy and install a rear seat. And once that was done, I started on the mechanics. This is a 1987 club car. And I knew when I bought it, it had bad oil seals in the rear end. Axle seals, oil seals, bearing seals, whatever you want to call them. It leaked oil, and the oil was getting all over the brake drums, and the brakes didn't work very well because of the oil on them. So I knew that, and I had done a little bit of research before I actually took possession of it, and kind of got the general idea of what it takes. But when I actually started working on it, and I tried to find YouTube videos, my favorite saying is, if I can find a video on it, I could replace your liver. I still stand by that, but there's no videos that show anything about changing the oil seals on an 87 club car. There's some newer models, it's totally different. So, kind of long story short, I eventually was able to find a repair manual. It's kind of like a Chilton's manual on golf carts. Found it for the 87 and dove into it and got this far. And this is kind of where, well, and I'll explain here about the axles. If you're working on an 87, what is it, 87, I think it's to 92. These don't say. These are the drawings of the axle assembly. And that's kind of where the problem comes in. This axle assembly is right for the passenger side. The driver's side, it doesn't really give you any detail at all, and it's totally different. And that's what I had to figure out. So I'll show you the axles here in a second and explain it. And again, this would only be true for certain year carts. 87, it's true. I think up to 92 or so, they were about all the same. But I'll show you here what the deal is. Alright, so these are the axles removed. The longer one here is passenger side, and the shorter one is driver's side. And, you know, all I needed was the oil seals. Like a dummy, I thought, yeah, you know, while I got it apart, probably a good idea to do bearings too. And that created a lot more problem. On the driver's side, I'm sorry, back up. On the passenger side, this one, the longer one. Down in here, first of all, there's this snap ring, and that snaps into the inside, a groove that's inside the axle housing. And that's what holds the bearing in place. Down in here, there's a spring. To replace this bearing, and this is a sleeve. To replace this bearing,
what you have to do is compress this spring. And I was able to make up this little gizmo. Just slide it on there like that. It went around the outside of the sleeve against the bearing there. And I put a couple C-clamps on here and squeeze that down and compress the spring. When you compress that spring, and get this out of the way here so you can see. There you go. When you compress that spring, there's a groove that you have to compress the spring, which that plywood block moved the bearing down. Then you got to just tap the sleeve down, and it's not real tight. It's not pressed on. Well, it is pressed on, I guess, but it doesn't take a press to move it. You move this sleeve down, and that exposes a groove that keeper ring is in, and you pop the keeper ring off, and then the sleeve and the bearing just slide off the axle. Easy peasy, once you know that. So then I got the other side, thinking it's going to be the same, right? Well, whatever happened to the spring? There's no spring. Is it missing? No. This is the sleeve, and this is the bearing, and that's the snap ring, and that's all there is to this side, and this is pressed on. And I actually had to go to a machine shop, and a guy pressed it off for me. And he didn't even charge me. It took him 5 minutes. He said, forget it. But without that press, I couldn't have done it, and I didn't have a press. So I did try a couple things banging on it. I put some steel rods in here and tried with a piece of wood, a block of wood on top, tried beating that down and knocking it loose, and it just didn't budge at all. It took a press to get it off. I thought I'd have to go get it back to the same place and get him to press it back on for me, but the bearing and the sleeve both slide down the axle fairly easily till you get to where they seat, and then it's, I don't know, 5/1000s maybe bigger around, so they fit tight. And to get it back on, I just took a piece of 1-inch EMT conduit, steel conduit, set it against the sleeve, and if it wasn't for that sleeve, I probably wouldn't have done that, because I wouldn't really want it against the bearing. But the sleeve was tight against the bearing, pipe tight against the sleeve. Took about a 2-pound little sludge and beat on it a little bit, and I was able to get it down. And it does seat. It seats against, there's a ridge there that it's seated against. So once it was tight against that ridge and seated, I knew I was good to go. So the other issue I've been having is getting the right oil seal. Let me get over there to it. This is the old oil seal. I've been dealing with a couple different supply houses, local club car dealers and parts places. They just don't handle any of the old stuff. They handle anything back to about 2000, and that's it. Anything older than that, they just won't even talk to you about it. But there are a couple places. VintageGolfCarts.com, I believe, is the one. And what's the other one? Oh, give me a second. Everything Kurtz. Let's see here. Where you at? Here. Everything Kurtz out of Jacksonville, Florida. They've got a tech support department, and they were very patient with me and very there's the VintageGolfCartParts.com is the other one. Both of them have tech support places, and they've both worked with me, and they sent me these. They said should be the right seals, and they're not. They sent me these first, said they should be the right ones. And I said they didn't fit, they weren't big enough. They said, okay, well, it's got to be Those are 3910s. If it's not a 3910, it's got to be a 3990. So they didn't even have me send them back. They just credited me for them. Thank you for that. And they sent me the other ones, 3990s. That's these. Oh, they didn't fit. They're identical to the 3910. Believe it or not, what we discovered was they were packaged and marked wrong. They were marked 3990, but they're the same thing as the 3910. So, they're sending me the 3990s. What we actually, and this may help you, what we actually did, if I can focus in on this, on these seals, there's some numbers. The numbers on there, you probably can't, I can't get it to focus, but the numbers on there are 35, 52, 8. And we discovered, they didn't even know this until we got talking about it, and we kind of figured it out, and yeah, those are the measurements of the seal in millimeters. It's 52 millimeters outside, OD. It is 52 outside, 35 inside, and 8 millimeters thick. When we discovered that and they double checked everything, that's when they said, yeah, that 3990 is the right seal. It was just packaged wrong, and if that wouldn't have been the case when we sent you the second ones, they would have been right. So those should have been it, but the wrong thing was in that pack. So anyway, the right ones are coming. It's just a matter to put it back together. It's just a reverse of the process. The axles are put together with the bearings on them, ready to put in. All I got to do is set the seal in here back against this ridge, this rim, and I got a big socket I can sit in there to tap that back into place. And then the axle just slides in through that seal into a bearing that's internal back at the differential. And you line your splines up and tap it back into place, and you put the snap ring back in that sits in this groove right here. Oh, and here's one of the rough parts. This is the wrong axle for this side, but to demonstrate here, when you're working with this, you have to deal with that snap ring through this access hole with like snap ring pliers, which makes it really a pain, but it's doable. So anyway, this is Thursday. The axle seals are supposed to be here by Saturday for the third time. Hopefully we'll get this thing put back together again. And I hope this helps somebody. I wish there had been a video on it, and since there wasn't, I'll put one up. And whether you're doing just the seals, or whether you're doing just the bearings, or whether you're doing both, that's the process. And actually, if you do pull it apart to do bearings, you probably should do new seals. I won't say that about the bearings though. If you just need new axle seals and you check the bearings before you mess with them at all and take them off, if you check them and they're good, from what I've read, it's pretty rare the bearings go bad. And, you know, this is all 20/20 hindsight. If I had it to do over again, I don't think I'd have touched those bearings. I'd have just put seals in it and put the axles back in. But it's done now. Oh, one other thing, and this might help somebody too. This sleeve, well, both of them, this thing's been worked on over the years by somebody. And I don't know if somebody had channel locks or pipe wrench or something on this sleeve, and they had kind of gouged it a little bit. And that might be one of the reasons those seals that were in there went bad and started leaking. So what I did, I rigged up a little bolt with fender washers, and I put JB weld on there and put it in a drill and spun it so I could sand it, and sanded it down, and got down to 1000 grit sandpaper to smooth that sleeve off, so that where it sits inside the oil seal, it won't wear the oil seal. And it's pretty good. Like I said, down to 1,000 grit, so I think we're pretty smooth. I think we're down to, you know, an acceptable size. It'll go in the seal okay, and um, that should work pretty good. And so that's, anyway, I think that's where we'll wrap it up now. When I get the seals, I'll do another video of putting the seals in and putting the axles back together, putting everything back in there again. Haha, there's just one a spider. Where'd he run to? He's gone. Well, anyway, so I think that's it. Hey, thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you here in about 4 more days.